All right, welcome to your Trump-Denmark update and Greenland OFC. For more videos like this, you can check out the YouTube channel Pal's Fundamentals. So Trump's interest in Greenland, right? It's back in the news, and it seems like, well, Denmark's been caught a little off guard. Let's unpack what's been happening.
Well, it seems like with Trump's reelection, his interest in Greenland has been reignited. I mean, we all remember a few years ago when this first made headlines. And, well, this renewed focus is definitely putting Denmark in a pretty delicate position.
Yeah, for sure. The TV2 correspondent, Rasmus Tanhold, reported on a U.S. Senate hearing about Greenland. And he noted that several senators, they seem to just assume that Greenlanders would prefer to be American rather than Danish. They even use the phrase, like, talking over the heads of Greenlanders.
Right, and at that same hearing, Alexander Gray from the American Foreign Policy Council, he stated that Greenland wants independence and sees itself as kind of like a burden to Denmark. But he didn't really give any data to support this.
Interesting. And the Senate hearing, they also really focused on Denmark's defense capabilities, or, well, lack thereof, I guess, in Greenland. Senator Ted Cruz, he reiterated concerns about Denmark's ability to, like, adequately protect Greenland's coastline.
Yeah, that focus on security concerns is kind of like a broader strategy, of the Trump administration. They try to highlight what they perceive as weaknesses to justify their interest in acquiring Greenland.
Yeah, and Denmark hasn't been completely silent on this. Defense Minister Troels Lund Poulsen, he acknowledged America's concerns about, Arctic security, and he indicated that Denmark will work to increase its military presence in the region. He also said he plans to discuss Arctic security with U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth at a NATO meeting.
That's interesting because Polson isn't directly addressing the Greenland issue with Hegseth. He's focusing more broadly on Arctic security. So it kind of seems like Denmark might be trying to shift the conversation away from Trump's more controversial statements about acquiring Greenland.
Yeah, for sure. And this whole situation, it's stirred up reactions within Greenland's political landscape, too. Audra Chemnitz, she's a member of the Greenlandic Parliament. She's considering running for re-election, and she's citing the need for reconciliation between Greenland and Denmark, given all this interest from America.
Yeah, and Chemnitz potentially running for re-election, it could mean that Greenlandic politicians are feeling the pressure to take a more active role, shaping their own future, considering their relationship with Denmark, and also asserting their own sovereignty in the face of, well, these external pressures.
And of course, the media has been, well, all over this renewed interest in Greenland. You've got headlines ranging from, like, Trump about Greenland, it's about protecting the free world, to journalist Uffe Gardell. He straight up called Trump a fascist because of his expansionist rhetoric.
It really shows the anxiety and uncertainty surrounding Trump's presidency, especially his unpredictable nature and his tendency to challenge established norms, which is obviously a concern for countries like Denmark that rely on a stable international order.
Yeah, absolutely. And back in Denmark, academics are weighing in on the situation, too. Niels Beer Poulsen, he's a lecturer at the Center for American Studies at SDU. He said the Senate hearing felt like an attempt to legitimize Trump's statements about Greenland.
Definitely speaks to the power of framing, right? By holding a hearing and presenting expert testimony, the Trump administration is trying to create legitimacy around an idea that many people see as just outlandish, maybe even dangerous.
For sure. And Beer Poulsen also raised a really important question that, wasn't addressed at the Senate hearing. What can the U.S. actually do with Greenland that it can't already do now?
Right. It makes you wonder what the motivation is behind this whole renewed push for U.S. involvement in Greenland. Is it really just about security concerns, or are there other, maybe less transparent factors at play?
Yeah, good point. And we also have to remember that poll from the European Council on Foreign Relations, the ECFR. It shows that while Europeans generally view the U.S. as a necessary partner, they aren't exactly thrilled about Trump's return. Actually, they're the least likely group globally to see his reelection as positive.
That poll definitely highlights the complicated relationship between Europe and the U.S. in the Trump era, right? There's a sense of obligation and recognition that the transatlantic alliance is important, but also a deep unease about Trump's leadership and how it impacts global stability.
Yeah, I mean, during the Senate hearing, Democratic Senator Andy Kim, he asked a provocative question, even though it was rhetorical. He asked, if we're talking about buying Greenland, shouldn't we consider buying the Faroe Islands and Iceland, too?
It really underscores, even though it was rhetorical, the potential for a domino effect if the U.S. were to actually acquire Greenland. It raises concerns about the U.S. potentially, setting their sights on other strategically important territories in the region and throwing the play concept of national sovereignty into question. Yeah, it really brings into focus, whether these territories are just pieces on a geopolitical chessboard.
It really makes you wonder about the long-term implications, for Denmark especially, with that ECFR poll showing, growing European skepticism towards the U.S. under Trump. And then this whole narrative about Denmark like failing to protect Greenland.
Yeah, it's possible this could push Denmark to reconsider its traditionally cautious approach to military power. They might increase their presence in Greenland, strengthen diplomatic ties with other Arctic nations, or even explore closer security cooperation with the EU.
And where does Greenland stand in all of this? It seems like they're caught in the middle of this power struggle between these two global giants.
Yeah, Greenland's in a unique and challenging position for sure, navigating this longstanding relationship with Denmark, but also, possessing a very distinct identity and interests. This situation has definitely forced them to reevaluate their place in the world and consider what path will best secure their future.
And we can't overlook the economic side of all this either. Greenland has these vast natural resources, oil, gas, rare earth minerals. Control of these resources seems like a pretty big factor in this whole geopolitical game.
Oh, absolutely. Greenland's strategic location and all those untapped resources make it a very desirable asset. For countries like the US and China, whoever controls Greenland has a significant advantage in the Arctic. And that region's grown in importance every day because of climate change and the opening of new shipping routes.
So we have Denmark caught off guard, Greenland facing these difficult choices, and the U.S. pursuing its own agenda. What's the key takeaway here for our listener?
I think the key takeaway is that this situation is way more complex than it might seem at first glance. It goes way beyond Trump just wanting to buy Greenland. This is about power dynamics, national interests, and the future of the Arctic region. It's a reminder that even seemingly outlandish ideas can have serious real-world consequences, and that we need to pay attention to these subtle shifts in the geopolitical landscape.
Right, we've seen these criticisms of how Denmark's handling Greenland's security, Greenlanders grappling with their identity and future, and the U.S. making these bold moves in the Arctic.
Yeah, the situation is definitely fluid and has the potential for some major shifts in alliances and strategies. Denmark's next steps are going to be crucial in determining the course of this whole geopolitical drama. Will they try to appease the U.S.? Will they take a more independent stance? Or will they look to other partners for support?
It's a fascinating and rapidly evolving story. We'll definitely continue to follow it closely. This whole situation with Trump and Greenland, it really shows you how unpredictable geopolitics can be in the 21st century.
Yeah, something that sounds like a crazy idea one day can turn into a big international issue the next.
Makes you wonder what Denmark will do next. Like, what if they start taking a more, hands-on approach to showing their control over Greenland?
That would definitely change their relationship with the U.S., for sure. And it could shift the power dynamic in the Arctic, which is becoming more and more important.
It really is a wake-up call. We have to rethink how we look at international relations. Things can change so fast.
This has been your Trump-Denmark update, and